My name is Paul Nemeth, and I am the author of a novel called Cataclysm Children, which is now for sale on Amazon and BarnesandNoble.com.
Okay, let's talk about your book. Just looking for local authors. I try to stay local. And I saw a short story that you did. Mm-hmm. And I forget what it's called.
It's called They Come Here to Die.
Oh, yeah.
Nice.
And so it was, it was rather long. I was surprised at how long. But I read almost the whole thing. And I was like, before I finished, I was like, I need to email this guy.
Well, thank you. Okay.
Yeah. And so you responded pretty quickly. So I was like, I checked out your site. I think you had like a MySpace.
That's right.
And then I saw that you had another book and I was like, great, like awesome. Let's bring this guy on the air.
Okay.
And so hopefully it'll be a good interview.
I'll do my best.
Are you a full-time writer?
No, I'm not really a full-time anything. I do music. I actually teach privately, and I'm at home during the days. I'm a full-time caregiver for our son during the days, and then my wife kind of comes over and takes the night shift when I go to work. So it would be neat to be a full-time writer. I just kind of did this almost as an experiment, but it's kind of liberating. We tend to self-identify with what it is we do. Like, for instance, when I walked in and you said author Paul Nemeth, and it's just, I have to get you. I don't think of those three words together.
Right.
And I need to start doing that.
Do you have an actual publisher?
Yeah.
Because a lot of the authors that I have on here choose to do independent, like the independent route. So it's always really interesting to hear people who actually get their stuff published. And
it's an interesting story. I do have a publisher. It's a small online publisher called stonegarden.net Publishing.
So when you're not writing, you're taking care of your little boy, you're doing music, you're cooking and cleaning?
Cooking.
Not cleaning.
If I can ask you a question, it's funny because right away you're like, is it named after the Dimmu Borgir song? And the answer is it is, but I kind of played title roulette. To be honestly, I'm not. I just thought the original title of the book was Heidenlärm, which is, I believe that's Old Norse or German for heathen noise.
Okay.
Has to do with rites that they did during the winter solstice.
Uh-huh.
The Heidenlärm was kind of the noise the ruffians made when they took to the streets and went out pranking people, basically.
Yeah.
So they, a couple authors that I've read try to draw distinctions between that and the urge between Norse and Germanic people to create this very abrupt, brutal sounding. And then I called it the Winter Demons, which is also a reference to. It's also something I reference in the book, something called the Oscarei, which is kind of the winter solstice ride. Which basically it's their version of Halloween.
Oh, okay. And I was thinking of that. I was like, sounds like Halloween. The book revolves kind of around incidences that happen at churches.
Well, yeah.
Oh man. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. Well, what the book really is it's a fictionalized account of. I was interested. I picked up a book called Lords of Chaos by an author named Michael Moynihan, and that talked about a series of church burnings that happened in Norway in the early 1990s. And it's interesting to me, the American public kind of ignored it, and the fact that it was traced to a group. And Dimmu Borgir is a band where they actually kind of captured my attention, but. So I'm like, an obvious gambit you see if you want a catchy title is to do a title that's already been done, like a song title. But the problem with Dimmu Borgir is, a lot of their song titles are either in Norwegian or are very wordy and kind of betray. Like, what turned me on to them was the song Progenies of the Great Apocalypse, but that's a little clumsy and takes up a lot of space, so...
Yeah.
Don't tell them I said that.
We saw Dimmu Borgir, like, recently when they played with... was in the Misfits. Now I can't even.
Oh, Glenn Danzig.
Yeah.
He's actually visible. Something I also wondered is, and again, growing up with the quote unquote satanic panic, and I mean that period in the early mid '80s when all of a sudden it was all about. There was this furor about whether or not there were underground satanic cults in America who were trying to kidnap your children. And Glenn Danzig is somebody. Him and King Diamond are two figures who have. Kind of claim to be Satanists, but the research that I've done, in a lot of cases, it's just theater. And there's a guy named Glenn Benton who sings for Deicide, who's just basically has no impulse control. I mean, that's his version of Satanism is just I'm going to live completely in the, but part of it, people have accused him of being very kind of calculated, doing what he has to do to sell the band, which is acting a little crazy.
Yeah.
He apparently was married in a church, presumably a Christian or Catholic one. So, although I'll stand corrected on that if I'm incorrect, but yeah. So those are some of the things that led up to the creation of it. And as far as the title, like I said, I looked for kind of a succinct title that wasn't weird. So
yeah. Well, I wanted to say too that when we saw Dangsy, we were very, I wouldn't say disappointed, but surprised.
Interesting. How so?
Oh, sorry, people out there. It was like Meatloaf.
Well, part of
it was like watching Meatloaf.
Well, part of his whole shtick is that kind of retro, almost kind of Elvis thing. I've also heard that the type of singing that he does. Occasionally, sometimes his voice will give out.
It gave out a lot.
Yeah, I've read a couple interviews about. I've read a couple accounts of his concerts where, theatrics are great, but it's just like Elvis in his later years.
I know. Meg. What kind of Elvis do I like? Fat Elvis.
You like Fat Elvis?
I love Fat Elvis.
Well, I guess
my favorite Elvis is later years Fat Elvis, which I think is probably comparable to later Glenn Danzig.
Yeah, it sounds like
out of breath, big fat, like he can't sing, so he has to go give the microphone.
Right. It sounds like Fat Danzig didn't really do it for you.
You always hear about those. Do you pee in jars? Defecate in jars? Only when you have to?
Only when I have to. Only when I'll mostly, if it's late, I'll find a nice bush somewhere. I'm sorry. Honey, I'm sorry if my wife is listening to this. But, I do music for a living. Just a lot of late nights out on a lot of country roads.
Okay, when there's weird hairs on the microphone, you start to wonder, are people talking on here, or are they rubbing their crotch on here?
Yeah. Well, you said there were cameras in here, so you might have to look at the footage.
Monkey, you need to find out what's going on with these.
I need to be a girlfriend in the mall in the post-apocalyptic world.
What does that mean?
Gosh.
Okay.
I'm sure there's plenty of people who could tell you.
Yeah, if you could tell me 415-341-1199. Tell me what this means.
Post-apocalyptic girlfriend.
Yeah. In a mall.
In a mall.
For a weirdo guy.
For a tortured artist.
And you know who the guy was? He was a taller, skinnier version of the guy who did the voice for Ratatouille.
Patton
Oswalt?
A tall, skinny Patton. Wow.
He was not very good looking.
Do you eat a lot of spicy stuff before you go to bed?
I think I did.
Yeah. Can music make you do stuff? Well, apparently the guy who wrote "You Light Up My Life" is in jail on $1.5 million bond for sexual assault. So the question really is, can listening to Debbie Boone turn you into a rapist?